Sade always felt London like a paradox against skin, a city of silent coldness, daily motion, and brown faces starched with histories from far away. In their Brixton flat, the tones of Yoruba sometimes coiled with British consonants. It was enough to remind Sade her family was an island within islands. Her mother, Josephine, filled every room with energy, hair wrapped in regal prints, her voice rolling out stories of Lagos markets and London bus stops with equal sharpness. Her father, Olu, moved quieter, but when he spoke, it was with warmth, a patience no one quite matched. Sade's world was music and headphones, sketchbooks that filled with women's faces, always women. Faces shaped by resilience, she drew her mother most. Angular brows, the flash of worry, hands folded tight. At the family Sunday table, the soft clash of old and new was constant, rice steaming and beans mixed with laughter. Her younger brother Teo would tease Sade for her steely independence, for her skepticism about all men except her father. Josephine smiled each time Sade claimed no one could win her trust. But all things turned. Sade's life twisted the day she saw Samuel outside the art school. His smile didn't conquer her at first, but his manner did. He spoke with a gentle accent she couldn't place, old wisdom tucked underneath. "I notice how you disappear into your drawings," he said one rain-soft evening. She let him walk her home, stunned when her mother greeted him with such warmth in their hallway, almost like she had known him before. Weeks layered together, calls, jokes in small cafes, walks that stretched long past sunsets. Samuel was attentive, never crowding her space, but showing up when she needed, bringing small gifts with meaning. An old Yoruba poetry book, a scarf with colors of her home. As their relationship grew, Sade was careful. She told her friends Samuel was different in ways that solidified week after week. When the time came to introduce him fully to her family, she planned it. A dinner, a table set with her father's favorites. Josephine cooked extra, wore her brightest blue gele. For Sade, that dinner was a test. Not for Samuel, but for the family myth that love was unreliable. As they ate, laughter ran high. Even Tayo admitted, "He's all right, sis." Samuel watched Josephine more than once that night, eyes lingering. Sade dismissed the flickers as kindness, the warmth strangers carried into rooms of those who fed them. She did not notice, the first time, how her mother touched Samuel's shoulder an extra moment, how Josephine's gaze lingered longer than custom. But the city noticed. London is a city of subtle eyes, streets that hold secrets under awnings and in the way people cross the road. Samuel became a fixture. He was at Sade's side at exhibitions, family barbecues, and Saturday drives. Josephine, always socially vivid, would loop him into conversations about Nigerian literature and music. Sade thought her mother just wanted to bond with her future son-in-law. But Tayo noticed the way Josephine laughed at Samuel's jokes, lower, softer. Olu seemed too busy or too content to notice. He was proud that his daughter had found someone gentle. One evening, as Sade waited for Samuel at a jazz club, she saw her mother stepping from a car across the street. Josephine moved with determined steps, looking over her shoulder twice before entering a restaurant nearby. Sade frowned but shook it off. Her mother had friends, a life. Still, later that night at home, she asked gently, "Mama, you out tonight?" "Business," Josephine said. "You focus on your marriage plans, Sade. Time flies." There was a flicker of irritation, an edge Sade did not recognize. Planning for the wedding pressed in. Samuel joined family meetings, learned traditions, folded napkins at Olu's side. Josephine took charge, selecting bright fabrics and making calls late, often excusing herself with, "Sade, this must be perfect. You too deserve it." But tension grew subtly. Sade found her mother distracted, phone screen glowing late at night, hands hurriedly locking it away. Some mornings, Josephine would hum unfamiliar tunes. Samuel sometimes seemed withdrawn when her mother entered the room, but he would recover quickly, smile, bring Sade her favorite teas. Tayo, always too sharp, joked, "Mama acts like she's getting married too." Sade snapped at him. The joke cut too close. A month before the wedding, Josephine announced she would handle the catering arrangements. "You rest, Sade. Enjoy your engagement." One rainy evening, Sade found a gold earring under Samuel's coat on their shared sofa, a design she recognized from her mother's jewelry box. She confronted Samuel, who hesitated, then laughed it off. "Your mum always loses things at family nights." London's gray rains pressed harder. Sade's dreams grew restless. In sleep, voices intermingled, her mother's and Samuel's, but she woke uncertain. She opened her sketchbook, doodling faces she couldn't finish. At a family dinner, Sade saw Samuel and her mother exchange glances over the candles, small, electric, barely notable, but it stayed with her. On the walk home, she asked him if he felt pressure. He said softly, "Your family means a lot. I don't want to make mistakes." All the while, Josephine pressed the family on tradition, on hosting pre-wedding events at their house. Olu receded deeper, working late, grateful for the distraction. As days flickered toward the wedding, London's hush wrapped Sade in questions she couldn't shape yet. She told herself her family was solid, her love resilient. But a storm was growing, a heartbeat away. The days before the wedding blurred with activity. Josephine moved through the house like a general, issuing instructions and rallying family. Sade found herself at her mother's heels, feeling both comforted and excluded, as if the planning had become Josephine's own ritual. Samuel was quieter than usual. At night, Sade tried to coax him into laughter, but his mind seemed elsewhere. He brushed her cheek softly, promising, "After the wedding, we'll make our own space. Just you and me." She believed him, but something sharp pulled at her, an ache she couldn't name. Tayo hovered with suspicion. He noticed Josephine's frequent absences, her long phone calls behind closed doors, and the way she so effortlessly disguised any tension with charm and an extra serving of jollof. One evening, while preparing family photos for the wedding, Sade caught her mother in the hallway with Samuel. Their conversation hushed. She stepped closer. Her mother's hand lingered near Samuel's elbow, her head tipped towards him. The closeness was too familiar. When Sade entered, they separated quickly, Josephine's smile stretching too wide. "Just discussing tomorrow's menu," her mother said. Sade tried to accept it, but her heart drummed louder. She asked Tayo if he had noticed. He shrugged. "Maybe they just like planning. Or maybe you should ask Samuel straight." People hide things until they don't. Sade resolved to trust her instincts. But as the wedding approached, small incidents built a pattern. Samuel arriving at the house when she was out. Her mother fixing her hair and makeup even when no guests were expected. An odd hush passing through the kitchen when Sade entered. Olu was a ghost in the household, unable to sense the tremors as he busied himself with overtime shifts, focused on sending money back to Nigeria, honored to contribute to the wedding, honored to let his wife lead. Sade watched her father drift further as Josephine seemed to pull everything into her orbit, including Samuel. The rehearsal was held at their flat. Josephine insisted on tradition. Sade must not sleep at home the night before the wedding. Sade protested but was overruled. Josephine was adamant, even fierce. Samuel stayed to help Josephine clean up after everyone left. Sade left reluctantly, the unease settling deeper into her bones. In her friend's spare room that night, Sade lay awake, recalling every moment that seemed off, every touch that lingered when it shouldn't. In the silence, she decided she could no longer explain it away. She promised herself, tomorrow, she would listen to any sign, follow any strange pull. Morning came drenched in London gray. The city felt heavy, expectant. At home, family swarmed in celebration clothes, while Josephine glowed radiant in gold. Samuel seemed nervous, but avoided Sade's gaze, his smile brittle. The ceremony was scheduled for early afternoon. Sade's heart pounded louder. She moved through rooms, glimpsing hurried conversations between her mother and Samuel. She caught Olu's gentle look, but he seemed miles away, lost in a fog of pride and routine. The tension, built from weeks of silence and glances, was about to snap. The house buzzed with a wedding morning's usual chaos. Cousins giggling, pots bubbling in the kitchen, borrowed shoes clicking on old linoleum. Josephine moved through it all, orchestrating each detail with the energy of someone trying to control fate itself. Sade, in her friend's dress, borrowed for something old, glanced at her phone. No message from Samuel, no reassurance. A sense of being out of place, adrift in a ceremony not quite hers, grew each minute. Half an hour before the ceremony, Sade slipped away, drawn by habit to her old childhood bedroom. She expected quiet, a place to catch her breath. Instead, muffled voices drifted from her parents' room, down the hall. Something in Josephine's tone, the intimate hush, sent a chill through Sade's chest. She approached softly, the carpet swallowing her footsteps. The door, slightly ajar, revealed movement beyond. Sade stopped, breath shallow. Samuel's shirt was half-buttoned, Josephine's hand on his chest. Their bodies close, their faces even closer, the air between them charged, not with argument, but with the gravity of secrets long shared. Saad's gasp was small but sliced the air. Both turned, Josephine startled, Samuel pale as ash. For a suspended instant, no one spoke. "What are you doing?" Saad's voice broke, a whip of betrayal. Samuel stammered, retreating, mouthing apologies that sounded empty and rehearsed. Josephine reached out, her words thick and desperate. "Saad, listen to me, please. It's not." Saad flinched, recoiling as if the whole scene burned. Memory fragments flashed. Every late call, every laugh, each touch, all rethreaded into a story she now saw fully, and all too late. The wedding, her wedding, became impossibility. A painting slashed down the canvas. Sade turned, ran, downstairs, past guests who'd only begun to gather, past questions, past hands that tried to intercept her. Tayo stood by the stairs, catching the distress and reading it instantly. He followed, but she was already at the door. Outside, London's sky opened up in sudden rain. Sade let it soak her, her veil crumpled in a stranger's hand. She did not look back. Behind her, upstairs, silence settled. Josephine began to sob, the kind of crying Sade had never heard from her, a lifetime of secrets splitting open, too late to fix. Downstairs, the family hushed, waiting, holding their breath. Olu moved up the stairs, confusion turning to fear. In the street, Sade walked, grief roaring inside her louder than the city's storm. She felt free and utterly broken, the day's promise scattered into nothing. There could be no wedding, no easy forgiveness. She walked, not knowing what would come next. The rain washed away the wedding's pageantry, its flowers, colors, and the promise of a new beginning. Sade wandered the streets near Brixton Market, soaked through, her mind in chaos. She ignored calls from friends, from family. Her phone buzzed until the battery faded. Each step seemed to peel away layers of her old self, leaving something raw and unfinished beneath. Tayo found her 2 hours later, sitting beneath a shop awning. He didn't speak. Instead, he dropped a jacket on her shoulders and sat, listening as her breath steadied, as the pain dulled just enough. When she could finally speak, Sade said only, "How long?" Tayo's eyes flickered. "I didn't know everything, but I saw things. Mama changed. Samuel too." Sade pressed her palm to her forehead, willing herself not to cry again. "Did Dad know?" "He's not stupid," Tayo said quietly, "but he trusts too much." Back in the flat, shock rippled. Olu looked older. Lines deepened around his mouth. Josephine hid in her room behind a locked door. The guests left quickly, leaving casseroles and condolences behind. Olu waited for Sade, his dignity dented but not destroyed. She met his gaze at last, expecting anger, but saw only grief. "I am sorry, Daddy," Sade whispered. "You didn't do wrong, Sade," Olu answered. "Sometimes the home is not what it seems, but it was never your shame to carry." Later that night, Josephine crept out and found Sade in the kitchen, numb with exhaustion. "My daughter," Josephine began, but Sade stopped her, voice flat and clear. "Why?" Josephine gripped the countertop, eyes filling. "I felt forgotten. By your father. By time. By myself. Samuel filled an empty space. But I was wrong. I am sorry. More than you can imagine." Sade sat in silence. The words hung between them, inadequate and unforgivable. "I can't forgive you," Sade finally said, not cruelly, but with a finality that closed a chapter. "You chose yourself over our family." Josephine nodded, tears silent. "I did." Samuel's attempts to call, to write, were returned unopened. Olu quietly told him never to return. There were no dramatic apologies, no late-night reconciliations. Just a brittle, honest distance. Tayo, Sade, and Olu in one part of the flat, Josephine in another, each sharing only the bare minimum to live as a household, divided by one unspoken event. With time, Sade found a rhythm in solitude. She drew compulsively, faces of women who looked neither like her mother nor herself, but caught between both. She spent late nights at work, joined Tayo for long walks, and visited her father at his quiet post-work tea. The pain persisted. But clarity grew. She realized she had survived not because her family was perfect, but because she had learned to see the truth, however ugly. She kept to herself when friends pressed for explanations, telling them little. Some whispered gossip, but it faded, as such things do. Samuel left London soon after, invisible as a rumor. Josephine tried to reclaim her old role, but the warmth was gone. Sometimes she hovered at doors, hoping to be invited in, but Sade rarely allowed it. A soft, aching peace returned, enough to let each day begin without fear, if not quite with hope. Yet Sade knew there was still one conversation unfinished, between herself and her mother. It would decide if their future would be silence or something different. Spring seeped into London, making the city gentler, the parks greener. In fitful sunlight, Sade discovered small, personal beginnings. Returning to markets she and Samuel once visited, repainting her bedroom, practicing forgiveness in increments rather than grand gestures. Weeks became months, and the rawness softened to a throb, a dull ache instead of a wound. Sade spent more time with Olu, sharing breakfast and stories, finding comfort in his steady pride, and learning the patience to sit with things that couldn't be changed. Tayo thrived on supporting her. Sometimes they laughed, real cathartic laughter, about the absurdity of family secrets or how awkward the flat had become. Other times, their silences spoke more than words, a shared knowledge that every family is constructed out of both love and pain. Josephine tried, sometimes, to reach through the wall that separated them. She brought Sade bowls of pepper soup, left gifts, books, new fabrics at her door. But Sade rarely invited her in. Their conversations were brief, clipped, but civil. Josephine apologized again and again, but Sade held her line. "I need time, and you need to face what you did. Not to me, to yourself." Father's Day brought the family together. If not whole, then at least unbroken. Sade sat with her parents, words heavy. This time, her mother did not try to force forgiveness, but listened. Olu looked from mother to daughter and said, "We move forward or backward, but we move. This is our house, yes, But your hearts are your own now. Sade steered her life slowly into new waters. She kept working, growing braver about showing her art. Works now richer, deeper thanks to all she'd endured. She started to date, carefully, without the rushing hope from before. One evening, months later, Sade found her mother at the kitchen table, quietly weeping over old photos. Something in the sight, her mother's hands fragile, her face open, moved Sade to sit down. She poured them both tea. After a long silence, Josephine whispered, "I can't undo what I did. But I can choose who I become now." Sade nodded, not in forgiveness or acceptance, but as a quiet recognition of truth spoken at last. They sat together in the hush, not family as they were, but perhaps something new, honest, uncertain, and open for the first time in years. Outside, the rain began again, gentle against the window, a lullaby for all that had been lost, and for what, after everything, might still begin.